3000.
My name is Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'd like to welcome today a good friend of mine, a dude who goes by the name of DJ Obliveus, aka Mr. Ryan. Thanks for coming today, man.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on today.
Man, you have what I'd like to call a bit of a Clark Kent kind of thing happening, where you are a high school teacher by day and a DJ by night, and I think you will have some awesome stories, man. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, and I feel like I should be wearing the glasses right now, my friend. If
you
I'm going to be the Clark Kent, I should have the glasses.
I can't see, man. Too many years of squinting at a Serato screen, I think's killed my eyes.
I'm in the same boat.
But man, look, thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it. And obviously people could probably tell already from your accent you are not from Melbourne. Where did you grow up?
Mate, I'm originally from San Jose, California, so South Bay near San Francisco, for those people that know the geography over there. I am
the Sharks?
San Jose Sharks, hometown team, never won a Stanley Cup.
Really?
No, not at all. Our biggest claim to fame sports-wise is probably... the Olympics back in the 60s.
Really? Not even 84.
Yeah, no. And the Olympics in the 60s only because we had two athletes from San Jose State University were the two athletes that actually held their hands up in unison with the Black Power movement.
There you go.
That put San Jose on the map.
One of the most famous photos of all time.
It is. And true story, the guy who did not make the podium but was good friends with both of those athletes was my high school shot put coach.
There you go.
So yeah, there's a little bit of history for you.
So you did shot put as well.
I lettered in all three sports in high school from year 10 all the way up. So yes, I was a jock.
I believe that, man, because you can't sit still. You've got to always do something.
Yeah, totally.
So growing up in San Jose, and then where do you first find music? In which avenue? Obviously back when we were younger, we didn't consume it like kids consume it now. Where did you find your tunes?
Oh, man. Well, I actually grew up in a small town in Northern California called Anderson, which is the butt end of California is probably the best way to say it. It's in a beautiful part of the country, actually, snow-peaked mountains on a regular basis. But I would say their number one industry was probably crystal meth growing up, and I'm not even lying.
Really?
All of the log mills were pretty much shut down, and yeah, most people dealt meth at that time,
really?
Or something. Yeah, it was a pretty rundown, squirrely town, and we lived there for approximately 7 years after we moved from the Bay Area. And it was there that I really developed a love of music because my mom was quite into music and always threw parties and just got me into, the Doobie Brothers at a young age, Dire Straits, anything. My mom was quite young, so Eric Clapton, anything like that. She got me into it at a young age. And so I just developed a passion for music quite young. And they would be kind of cool and let me choose the music at the parties in between pouring their beer from the kegs that they would have. And I guess it developed from there.
So from a very early age, you were DJing?
Yes, I was. But I never would have thought I would actually become a quote-unquote DJ because I was more into the music from the band side of things.
Yeah, well, I guess that influence was there if your mum's playing that sort of stuff, and hip-hop music is really in its infancy then, if it's even around kind of much at all.
Yeah, in my small northern town, it wasn't around a whole lot. To be 100% honest, I hated hip-hop when I first heard it. Hated it because I was so by the time that hip-hop became known, like when Run DMC was going massive with everybody, I was so by that point I was so into thrash metal. I was into my Metallicas, my Anthrax, my Slayer, my Megadeth. I was going to concerts nonstop. I'd already started playing bass in bands by that point. I was into my punk rock. Nothing was as polar opposite to me as hip-hop music. I just thought it was the devil's music, not that I was religious, but I hated hip hop when I first heard it because it just wasn't what I was into.
And what's your pivotal point that made you think, actually, this is kind of cool?
Oh, that would have been Anthrax and Public Enemy, Bring the Noise. When they dropped that and I saw Anthrax was on stage with Chuck D, Flavor Flav, and I'm like, whoa, it's cool enough for Anthrax.
And then and that's not the famous, but a very, very famous crossover record.
Full stop. Yeah. And I remember going to see him on that tour and seeing all the bands that played, but just seeing the love that they had. And to be honest, Anthrax had a lot to do with my love of hip hop because they got me into so many other artists. I never heard of EMPMD until I heard about them through Anthrax. So they got me into even, I don't want to say underground hip hop, but they got me into all the New York hip hop at the time. So
they were your gateway drug.
100%. 100%, man. And then once I got into it, I was just like, yeah, you know what? And plus, I played football all through high school, and obviously there was no connection between me and all the African American dudes that I played with, and we were all quite close. So after practice, they'd be listening to all the hip hop, and I had to act like I hated it because I didn't want to backstab all my predominantly white thrash metal friends. But then once Anthrax made it cool and I started getting into hip hop, before you know it, I started having a point of conversation to start with after football practice. So I actually got a lot closer to a lot of my African American friends from the football teams, and I'm friends with a lot of those guys still to this day.
Are a lot of them are still in that town, or they've moved on?
Yeah, well, by this point, I'd already moved to the Bay Area, so I had moved away from Anderson. Sorry, I moved way ahead right there.
That's all right.
So yeah, by this point, I'd already moved back to the Bay Area, so I was actually living in San Jose, which is a really big city. So this is the South Bay. So by this point, near Santa Cruz, I'd been living in a fairly big city by this point, and that's where all my friends were.
And then you start digging for music. You start searching for music, record stores, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was open to everything. I remember vividly freshman year of high school, which is year 9 for non-Australians, they would know. Freshman year of high school, my mom for Christmas bought a turntable for us. We lived by my mom's single mom, so she bought a turntable for our apartment, and I was like over the moon because all of a sudden I could start buying records again, because we hadn't had records since I was probably a little kid.
Yep.
Collected records when I was really young, Def Leppard back in the early 80s, but we hadn't had a record player for a lot of years because we were quite poor. And then I remember my mom, as a waitress, she came home with a record player one year for Christmas, and I was stoked. Yeah. And I worked in a comic book shop by that point, so I started, whatever money I made went to either comic books or buying records. Yeah. And I just became an absolute worrisome nightmare for everybody at Streetlight Records in San Jose, because I'd be there literally every Saturday and Sunday with whatever money I made buying records.
So it's interesting, the comic book thing, because that potentially may have really helped your collective kind of, because you're a big collector. So, and I think comic a huge, like, people that collect, that's one thing that they kind of, that's another gateway.
Mate, I have 10,000 comic books at home.
Really?
Yeah. My mom actually sent them out in one of those huge shipping containers probably about 7 or 8 years ago, because she got sick of holding on to them in her garage. Wow. So she sent me out about 10,000, I would say, plus all my graphic novels, which are in our living room at home.
And on all your records as well.
All the records, man.
Lucky your wife is cool, because fuck, man.
Love you, Jodine. She seriously allows me to keep way too much stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I could probably tell it's all very categorized and orderly.
Yeah, I really haven't gone through the comic books since
you got some treasures in there?
I definitely have some treasures. I pretty much have the entire Todd McFarlane run of Amazing Spider-Man, which are all fetching still a pretty good price. I guess I've got a lot of good stuff because I collected a lot of stuff. Some of the early Wolverine appearances, things like that. So yes, I do have quite a lot of good comic books.
Do you value them as much as your records?
No, I probably should. In fact, I was just in the States probably about 6 weeks ago, and my mate is a hardcore collector still, and he keeps his in those like straight hard plastic boxes.
Like the Perspex thing.
Yeah, and he actually gets them valued, and so I reckon mine are probably trashed enough. They may be in plastic sleeves, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Do you personally, what your record collection or your comic book collection?
Oh, it's a tough one. I haven't pulled out comic books in a long time. I think
the records get a lot more use.
Yeah, the records get more use. And actually, I think I equate the records with a lot more happiness, because the records were the first things that I guess started, leading to females taking notice in me. So the comic books sure as hell weren't doing that. No.
You were sitting there in a club reading a comic book and weren't getting attention.
As a comic book collector, it was pretty much me and the 5 virgins that used to come into the comic book shop on a regular basis. But no, records at least got me out and got me doing parties and things like that.
You were playing football too. I'm sure you would have been popular
enough. Yeah. Well, you'd think, but it didn't quite work out that way for me. I was a late bloomer. Let's just say that.
And I know that you played in some bands. You mentioned that a little bit before. Do you want to talk about any of those bands, or what kind of music direction you were taking?
Mate, I would love to. So in year 9, moved back to the Bay Area, and I'd already developed a massive love for going to see live music. So at that point, I'd seen heaps of punk rock bands up in Portland. I left this out. We lived in Portland for a number of years as well after we left Anderson.
A solid music scene there.
Oh, huge music scene there. So this is predating grunge, really. So, but this is when bands like probably Sonic Youth, they're in New York anyways, but like bands from Seattle, very Seattle bands. Tad was definitely playing down in Portland fairly
Sub
often.
Pop around that sort of time?
Sub Pop was very new and in its infancy. I couldn't really say the years because I wasn't hugely into the whole Seattle sound at that time, but I knew there were bands that were playing down there at the time. I know Green River was a band that I saw on flyers at least, but I was still more into the heavy thrash metal punk rock scene, and Sub Pop wasn't 100% that. It was their own thing and they were developing it. But I do remember seeing Soundgarden flyers in Portland around that time. So this is the very late 80s, and early 90s.
The very infancy of the Seattle sound.
Oh, fully. Stuff. Yeah. It was just starting to come
And then
around.
It takes over the world real quickly.
And then it took over. But yeah, probably not for another couple years. So yeah, so when I started going to see bands at that time, and then I had a friend, Joe Gallegos, I'll never forget him. He was the sneakiest dude with the longest hair in 8th grade that I was friends with. And we wanted to start a band. So our whole thing was saving up money so we can buy instruments so we can start a band, but it never quite happened. We left Portland soon after that for reasons I can go into detail at a much later time if you want to talk for the next 3 hours. But anyways, we ended up back down in the Bay Area, and the love of wanting to be in the band was still there. So I met a few guys through the football team, found out they loved thrash metal. We were all Metallica, Anthrax fans, and then they went out and bought some instruments. I had instruments, and we started jamming. So that's where the first formation of my first band, Grim Reality, began.
Grim Reality,
man. So there was a few other incarnations with other people, but Grim Reality was the one that stuck. So that was with my mates Morgan and Josh, who I'm still friends with to this day.
You recorded stuff?
We did. We actually had a couple demos. Actually, my mate just sent me the demo, our first demo that we recorded, Attack of the Flying Piranhas being the first song. Anyways, so that was our first thing, but we were already trying. So there was already, I guess, a little bit of a love of hip hop there because of the whole Anthrax Public Enemy thing. So I'm fast forwarding again. I'm probably in about 91 by this point. Yep. So by 91, there's always already that love of rap rock that was starting to come in. This way predated stuff like Limp Bizkit and Korn and Deftones and bands like that would be huge. I had a love of rap rock already, and so did the guys in the band. So on our first demo, there's actually a song that we did on there where I didn't play bass. I actually got on the mic and did the worst white boy horrible raps you've ever heard in your entire life. It's on tape, and it's just as bad now as it probably sounded then. Yeah. So I guess that love of wanting to do that. By that point, I was really getting into hip hop.
But there was, I was pretty young, but I can remember... obviously the Chili Peppers, Anthony Kiedis was doing that sort of thing.
Huge.
Also Faith No More was very rap rocky. Yeah. So but it didn't have a name then. That was just like alternative music.
Yep.
And then it kind of, I feel like it didn't become rap rock until later when they just figured out they needed a name for this new sort of genre.
Full stop. And then new metal would come into it. Same. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. So that band though only lasted until about 92. That's when I graduated high school. We played our grad night. So the last night they booked us for the grad night, they made us a huge logo out of all this glitter and everything. It was actually pretty cool. And we played, and then we would have played a few more shows as Grim Reality, and then we got a new singer, and then we kicked out the old guy, and then we became Chug.
Chug, yeah, like Chug a beer.
Yeah, we changed our name to Chug, and
which fits in with the frat boy kind of
fully. That's kind of where we were going. And then before you know it, so then I stopped playing. We kicked out the singer that we'd brought in. I jumped onto the mic full stop.
Really?
Because we started realizing that whenever I got on the mic, it was a little bit more energetic. And like
you've got a lot of energy.
Yes, and I would do stupid stuff like stage dive and just go crazy and pummel all around the stage. And then, we actually started doing okay. We did a few gigs. We opened up for No Doubt.
Really?
So we played a few gigs. We also opened up for Machine Head, if you know your thrash metal. So that's where we were. We were kind of straddling that line between thrash metal.
Talks of labels being interested?
No, nothing like that. No, we were not accessible at all. We actually tried to specifically write songs that were in such an odd time signature that nobody could follow along.
Right.
But it's like we were trying to showcase our musicianship.
You're flexing your muscles.
Yeah, and we brought in my mate Aaron on bass, and who is an exceptional musician. I just hung out with him again last month, and he's still an exceptional musician, always has been. And he kind of took us up a notch in terms of musicianship. Didn't really equate, though, to us getting any bigger, I guess. We kind of got as far as we were going to get. Awesome music. I had the best time. I was in a band with my best mates, 2 of whom I'd played football with from year 9 onwards. But then by that point, I started getting into other styles of music, and that's not what we were doing. And so I met a couple other guys that were more on the funk side of things, because I was really into my funk music by then. Proper funk music. I was really, probably because of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I got into more Parliament stuff, kind of delved into that a lot more. And so met my mate Casey and Dan, and then we formed a new band that was more on the funk side of pop music, I guess. Ska as well. So that whole scene was kind of coming in, the whole...
Well, that's where like No Doubt sort of came from, and that sort of thing.
And so that No Doubt show I mentioned was actually, I did 2 gigs that night. I was also in my new band that night. We opened the show. Chug came on second. So
did you just stay on stage?
I just basically stayed on stage and started playing with the next band. So that new band, we were called Jalopy Taco Stand.
That's the one that you've told me about.
That's the one I told you about. JTS. So JTS actually was slightly bigger than Chug was, so we actually did get a little bit more notice around, because I think we were a little bit more accessible. We didn't try to write music that was in weird, odd time signatures,
You'd matured a little bit.
Yeah, we weren't straight chin stroking. So JTS was doing quite well, and I was in JTS all the way up till about 98. So in that band for about 5, almost 6 years. We did release an album on a very small record label called Camel Toe Records.
Amazing.
And then right when our next EP was about to come out, we kind of had a falling out. Like the band kind of just fizzled, and we went our different ways. And that was right around the time I met the girl who was to become my wife, and I decided to move
in the States.
In the States, I met my wife in San Jose. She was finishing up her doctorate at Palmer Chiropractic in San Jose.
Yeah, right.
And I was just working at Costco, finishing up my degree in social science, and it was kind of timing. She was telling me the night I met her how she just accepted a sponsorship to come work in Melbourne. Which I'd never really heard about ever.
So at this stage, you've met a woman, you fall in love, you think, I'm going to follow her wherever. And you had no idea what Melbourne was about.
Had no idea whatsoever. I just quit my band before I met her, so I don't want to say I quit my band because of my wife. I just quit my band anyways to focus on school, to become a teacher. And then I met my wife totally in a really crazy way, which I'm not going to go into detail here. But yeah, it was meant to be, let's just say that. And the fact that she was coming here, I think I kind of thought, she's an awesome chick. I'm really keen on her. It'll be fun while it lasts. And then didn't think I was going to fall in love. And then before you know it, 9 months later, I'm out here in Australia. I came out to visit once. So while she lived, she was still here for 9 months before I came out. And I had to finish up my degree. So I had to basically do 2 semesters worth of work in 1 semester to get out here as quickly as possible. Came out here, loved Melbourne from the get-go.
Where were you staying when you first got here?
When we came here, my wife's practice was in Hawthorne, right off of Auburn Road, which is right near where I teach now. Kind of funny, full circle. And so we got a place across the street, 250 Auburn Road. So big ups. A lot of memories at that place. So moved in there, and then I did my graduate diploma course at Melbourne Uni because I wanted to become a teacher. And then the whole idea was to go travel to the UK because her sponsorship was supposed to finish at some point. And then I thought, okay.
So there was no plans of laying roots in Melbourne.
No. Melbourne was always going to be this stopgap place. That's where we're going. But then, 3 months after I moved here, we got pregnant with our first son. And then we kind of just thought about it. You know what? There's a lot worse places in the world to live.
Totally.
We actually really like it. And by that point, 3 months into moving here, because I brought out 2 crates of records, because I should probably say before I'd quit my band, I'd started buying records and really started getting into DJing. And that's
funk stuff and
I wish. Mainly I was in all hip hop. I had all hip hop at first, but hip hop and deep house. Because my mate threw a deep house party. And I started going to his deep house, and we started going to warehouse parties, all the wicked parties in San Francisco, Gyno, Yano, Garth, all those guys from Greyhound Recordings used to throw these wicked parties. So some pretty cool raves that we used to go to. And so I started going to raves, and then decided, I think I'm going to give this DJing a go. And so I bought decks. So I started buying all these deep house records. I already had a ton of records because I'd been buying records since I was a kid anyways. So I already had a pretty big record collection to start with.
And we're talking, this is late 90s?
This is 97, 98? No, probably 98. Yeah, around 98.
So, and CDJs don't even exist.
No, I didn't have any. No,
it's just straight records.
Oh, straight records.
And there was a record store not far from where you were there with Alley Tunes was
Yeah. So when we moved, so I had plenty of record stores in the Bay Area, and then I moved here. Alley Tunes was my spot. I still go to Alley Tunes. So I remember Tom and all the guys that used to own Alley Tunes. When my first son was born, me and MC Direct, who's Mark Spy's my best mate, he lived down the street. We used to walk Zach in the pram to Alley Tunes, and then Zach would just sleep in the corner, and we'd dig for records for hours, just talking crap until Zach would wake up, and then we'd go get a coffee, come back, and that was pretty much it. Because when Zach was born, my first son was born, I wasn't a full-time teacher yet because my wife was sponsored. She had to work, and I wasn't allowed to work. I got under her sponsorship. So I don't know. Most people probably don't want to hear the inner workings of immigration.
No, but it's a full-on thing that a lot of people have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I imagine back then it is a heap easier than it is now.
Oh, mate, it was so simple. Like
two people between you, there's not one like Australian passport.
No, at this time, not at all.
But back now, it wouldn't happen.
Well, I mean, my wife was on the in-demand list, so it was easy for her as a Cairo. But we still didn't even think about applying for permanent residency at the time. We were just happy living in Hawthorne, happy with our son. We moved into our own place. We moved out of the shared house we were in, moved into our own place. And just living it. I was loving it, walking around buying records. I would work, after I got my graduate diploma, I would work 2 days a week as an emergency teacher at various schools in the Hawthorne area. So I worked at places like Cary, Xavier, St. Kitts. But also at Hawthorne Secondary College, places like that. So I would do that 2 days a week. And then because I'd brought these records out with me, a week after I moved here, I went to an open decks night at the Laundry. Remember when Laundry Bar used to do open decks on Tuesdays?
And it was more, before Dave had it, it was more of a alternative bar.
Full stop. Like I remember, I know Dave, and I'm going back to Lucky, when Lucky owned it with the whole crew.
Yep.
And so I loved Laundry. I remember going to visit there when I came to visit my wife in Australia before I moved here. I loved that venue. And then to go there on a Tuesday, I remember I did my first open decks on a Tuesday. I literally carried in 2 crates of records because I didn't really have record bags or anything because I'd never done gigs. I'd never done gigs. I was only do house parties and stuff like that. And I had all these deep house records, but I remember they booked me, and I wanted to play that, but I was already kind of into breakbeat by that point. But they booked me for 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, so I kind of knew in my head. Nobody even had to tell me. I'm like, that's not an appropriate time to play breakbeat. That's not an appropriate time to play house music. I'm going to bring all my funk records. I'm going to bring all my hip hop. So my mate Speezy helped me carry my 2 crates of records in the laundry on that first one. I'm not cheating you. They were laundering. There was vacuum cleaners going. There was cleaners there cleaning the place because it was after Madism's. So Monday night, Madism's would have gone crazy. The place had been torn apart because Jay Red and the crew, and it's all getting vacuumed up. And I walked in, and the person that opened the bar had no idea who I even was because I'd signed the little list thing. And he's all, yeah, I've got no booking for you. And I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty sure I signed the list last week. And he goes, oh yeah, here you go. So he's all, you're actually the only one booked for the next, 3 hours. And I'm like, oh, well, I got someplace I got to actually be, but I'm happy to play longer if you want me to. He's all, I don't care, mate. He just basically said, go up there and play. And so I just went up there and played a bunch of funk records and hip hop. And before the end of the set, he came up and asked me if I would come back the next week and play, but at a later time, which I did. Because I was like, cool, yeah, for sure, yes. And then after that second one, they booked me. They say, we've opened a new bar in the CBD called International Lounge Bar. Do you remember that place?
Well, it sounds like what becomes lounge.
Yeah, well, no. It became Ding Dong Lounge.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so it's down Market Lane. Yeah. So lounge came later. So so then after 2 weeks of doing that, they asked me to start playing Friday nights at at International Lounge Bar with some guy named Nick Thayer and Mark Brand. And so I had my first residency 2 weeks after moving to the country.
Amazing, man.
Not knowing how to actually mix records.
So you weren't mixing them?
I was beat mixing poorly. Really? I was better at beat mixing deep house records at the time.
Well, because everything's a consistent sort of 128-ish.
But they wanted hip hop. And then I remember going into lounge and I was doing the 1 to 4 a.m. set after Nick Thayer. And I remember shitting myself because Nick Thayer, he knew his shit. He was a good DJ.
Yep.
And he's rocking it, playing all this cool music that I didn't even know at the time.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, maybe I can bring my breakbeat records down here. And so I started playing my hip hop and that went well. And then I started bringing breakbeat down there and then that well. And then that led to them letting us run our Beats Working party in their back room. And then that just opened me up to everything else in Melbourne.
And then that's like a network right there for you in one sort of hit.
Oh, full. I seized it with both hands. But you know what I did? And this is something, I don't know, your listeners might find this interesting. As I tell everybody, and I tell my son this because I've got an 18-year-old son who's just gotten booked for his first proper residency. I didn't go in just as a DJ. I went into the club and I said, okay, do you need help with graphic design? Mm-hmm. Do you need help with editorial? I write, I do artwork, I do this. I went in with everything.
Yep.
And, every one of the venues I started with like that, I started doing all of that. Yeah. And then I tried to make myself so indispensable to the venues that they wouldn't dream of not having me. And that basically got me in with a lot of places quite quickly.
That totally, man. So like if you can do your own flyers, if you can do your own promotion, and back then obviously there's no Facebook, but if you're like, I'm making flyers, I'm handing them out, I've got this, I'm turning up with a crew, it makes it a lot more inviting for them to keep you. And like you said, that you're indispensable, they can't get rid of you. So yeah. And now I think kids are still doing that, but they're just like, I've got 1 million Facebook friends. It's a different sort of scenario.
It's a whole different way of promoting now for them.
But look, even from when I was DJing with you a few years ago, the venues would much prefer to have somebody who is going to promote on every avenue they've got, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and try, rather than the dudes who are just going to be like, yeah, it's a gig, turn up and leave. Yeah. So you want to be as proactive as possible because that's just going to equate to more gigs.
Full stop. And try to actually get there early. Show them that you care. As I still, to this day, it does kind of annoy me when I play with people that show up right before they start. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying anything. They're awesome DJs. They kick ass. And I'm not saying this about anybody because, we've all been there. Mm-hmm. We've all showed up late to a gig.
But it's courteous to send them a message and say, hey, I'm cutting it fine, because you don't know if they're cutting it fine to be at the next place, right? And that's when everybody is on, especially on Chapel Street, you got to be Blue Bar then to Lucky Cock. You might only have... Well, you got no time.
Yeah.
And you've got to make sure that person doesn't need to be down at 56 bricks in 5 minutes.
Yep.
So that's part of the common courtesy, though.
Yeah. And I feel some of that's gotten lost, so maybe, but again, I'm probably just sound like an old timer, that's it. Because we came up at a different time where that was just expected that you would kind of show up and show support for the whole night as a whole.
Well, yeah, I think that's a different story. Yeah. And without social media then, you couldn't tell people where you were at the drop of a hat, so you'd just go, this is my gig, and you'd be there all night, and you don't know if your friends would turn up early or late or whatever, so you kind of had to.
Yeah, it was just the way it was. And I'm not having a go at anybody about that. I just want to point that I don't want to sound like that old guy saying, oh, it was better back in the old days, because I actually love it now. I love the ease of which we can go from gig to gig.
You don't have to carry 2 crates of records.
Yeah.
You do carry records if you want to, but you don't have to.
Which I do sometimes. You do. But yes.
Let's talk about the gig poster thing, because obviously you like your design, you still draw and you still do all that sort of stuff. So were you making gig posters back with the band stuff as well?
Yes, full stop. I was the artist for every one of my bands, and I did lots of blacklight posters for all of our gigs. A lot of my stuff's up still on my Facebook page that I put up if anybody ever wants to look at it. But I don't know how old our listeners are, Anyways, but yeah, I did a lot of that. And so I actually forgot just how much of it I did. But like when my mom sent out all my comic books and all my records, she sent out 2 full things of all my artwork as well that she had rolled up, like all the posters that I'd kept.
It's cool that she kept all that stuff.
I know.
Some mums would have just thrown that shit out.
Yeah, I know. I think she knew that there was a lot of time that went into those, because I used to spend hours. Like I'm not lying, it would take me 6 hours to design a poster for our gig.
I can't see you sitting down for 6 hours.
Yeah, I know. Well, the things you do, and when you're very focused, I can sit down.
No, you just got a lot of energy. That's all I'm saying,
do.
man. So let's talk about your passion for teaching, because obviously, aside from music and design and stuff, you love teaching, and you even sent me something the other day when you got a positive, let's say, review from an ex-student. So that, I guess, is the equivalent to like, you know, rocking a dance floor and that sort of thing. You must be stoked when you get some positive stuff, and when kids say that you've made a difference in their lives. That's got to be extremely rewarding.
Extremely. Like, I was not expecting that. What I sent you was just because we were talking about this show coming on, and I just kind of pointed out, you know, this is the type of thing that happens in my regular job, and it does happen fairly often, not just because of me, but because I'm also a head of faculty at my school. So, you know, it happens for all my teachers. I like to think that I've got a very good team that I work with in my school. But yes, I'm a humanities teacher, so I teach geography mainly, but I have been an ancient history teacher as well. I've taught politics. I've taught pretty much everything in the humanities vein. But yeah, it's pretty stoked when you teach, because I teach year 12 students, and when you see them do really well, and because it's something they're passionate about, yeah, it just gives me a natural high. You know, I love my job, my day job. Yeah,
it's cool with year 12s as well, because you've got the kids there that really want to learn by that stage, and they're passionate about that specific subject. If they don't like it, they've weeded that out in the earlier years. They've moved on to something else. So if they're there doing humanities, ancient history, or whatever in year 12, they fucking care about that.
Yeah, full stop, man. And like, I just had my year 12s right before I came in here for this show, and starting a whole new unit on population. And yeah, just watching them, obviously lots of size because it's a new unit, and I actually did set quite a lot of homework that they need to have done by Friday. They weren't happy about that. But they're so focused, and they actually are so keen about the subject. I know, I've already seen their OneNotes. They've already started on it. They're already moving.
Because it's all digital now.
Oh, mate, it's a whole different world than when you and I were in school. It's completely different. And COVID did change a lot of that too. So
it pushed where it was going pretty quickly.
Yeah, full stop. And I fully embraced the digital side of things. I didn't mind that at all.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about teaching year 12s is when they finish, the year later, you might see them at venues that you play at. And I guess that does happen.
It happens a lot.
Because you're still playing at venues around that are pretty popular with young kids. So that I think I was at one venue with you one night, and you're like, I just spotted some students on the other side of the bar from last year. And you're like, oh, man. But that was, I think, when your school didn't know that you DJ. And now it's a bit more of an open secret that you do that.
Yeah, my school knows. Again, I don't know how much my school knows. I still think my principal, for example, is under the impression that I do this kind of as like I play the occasional wedding, you know, like I do it as a hobby. I don't think they realize just how much I'm out there doing it.
They don't realize you're playing 45s at Section 8 on a Wednesday to a whole bunch of kids listening to Afrobeat. And then going to school like 9 hours later.
Yes. I don't think they fully grasp that one yet. You know, that's always interesting when they do kind of when they kind of make that connection. That's a little bit more serious than that. But at the same time, I give them no cause to think that it has any impact on my schooling at all, because I'm able to actually section it off. Being that we're talking about Section 8, so I can section off what I do at school, and then when I leave school, I leave that behind, and I can focus on the music side, and I'm very good at that. And then same thing when I got to go spend time with my family, I can section off the other two things quite well.
I can imagine that as long as you're doing well and exceeding at your job, it gives them no cause for concern. So if you were slacking off and they thought things were changing and they're like, hang on, this dude's out 6 nights a week DJing, they might have something to say. But as long as you're still excelling, then I guess that just speaks for itself.
That's what I hope, and I would hope my school does think that about me, because I don't really hide it like I used to anymore. Like, I tried to keep it fairly quiet, but once I started DJing all the school functions, and I remember looking over my principal, and she was just like, giving me what is going
you're
on
like
here.
Practicing
fair
bit.
I'm like, this is literally what I'm going to be playing at Lucky Cock later tonight. You should come see this. That's literally my Lucky Cock set.
And those kids at Lucky Cock are school kids 2 years older. Some of them might be just finishing school. So you're definitely well versed in that.
I'm used to that age group. That age group and me go together very well.
Very well. So you do a couple of shows yourself. And one's with a dude, Shan Frenzy. He's a well-respected guy in the music scene in Australia. Used to be from Melbourne, now is in Sydney. Do you want to tell us how you met him and how important he is to the scene?
Oh, Shan's probably one of my very best friends, and we've developed a much greater friendship since COVID. So I've known Shan since about 2008. Was probably the first time I met Shan. He came down because there was this guy that was living down in Melbourne by the name of Paul Master. I don't know if you remember that name or not. Anyways, he used to run these regroove parties and things like that, and absolutely shit type of music that I got into for a brief period of time myself. Sorry, Paul, if you're listening to this. I absolutely hate that music though. Anyways, so Paul was running these parties, and so he was bringing down DJs that he knew from Sydney. And so he brought down this guy, Frenzy, who I'd never met before, hadn't even heard of him. Like, this is probably, I'm so self-centered. By this point, I've got 2 children at home as well. I'm DJing, I got school. So I'm not really paying attention to DJs from Sydney. So he brings down this dude from Sydney by the name of Frenzy. And by this point, I was running Lounge downstairs on Swanson Street for those people that remember Lounge.
Now it's a restaurant.
Yeah, it's a restaurant. Yeah. I think I was just reading something on Facebook. Everybody's kind of hearkening back to the good old days.
Yeah.
And Matt Rad used to do Friday nights, and I used to run Saturday nights.
He said that in the one I did, the episode with Matt, he said that was his favorite gig
Mate,
ever.
It was the business. I cannot even begin to tell you how much that was actually the gig where I first started playing 45s out. Yeah, so it was just because it was open format, and it was all still vinyl. This all predated Serato, so this would be 2006, 2007, 2008 era. I got Serato while I was playing down there, and I started bringing Serato to that place for the first time. But it was open format, as long as you could play party stuff. And because you were getting people off the street, you would have every type of person in Melbourne rolling into that joint. So,
and with such a late license.
So we were there
catching them leaving other joints.
Mate, I remember playing there on Saturday nights till 6 a.m. on Sunday mornings, and I was coaching my son's under-8s football team by that point. And I would come home, I'd get home by 7, take a shower, and his games were at 8:30 a.m. and I would get to the field, and luckily I had a good team manager that would set it all up, and then I would go coach his under-8s team with no sleep. So yeah, Lounge was an experience. Anyways, so I was doing Lounge for a couple years, and by this point I'd started playing 45s in my sets. Not total 45 sets, but I was playing a lot of 45s because I had them and I was getting interested. Anyway, so Paul brings this guy down, Frenzy, and say, "Oh, you got to meet this guy, Frenzy. He plays 45s too. I think you guys will get along." So I met Shan, and he was booking Shan. By that point, Paul had taken over bookings upstairs, and so he was doing the bookings upstairs. And so he introduced me to Shan, and Shan and I just immediately hit it off. It wasn't necessarily about the 45s. It's just Shan's a really nice guy. He's got a really good personality. He's actually easy to talk to, and this is for anybody, not just me.
And he loves music, and you love music, and all sorts of music. And
when I met him, I didn't realize the history he had in Melbourne. I just thought he was some Sydney wanker DJ that Paul was
Sydney wanker DJ.
Because that's I know. I'm not implying that Sydney has wanker DJs.
No,
but I kind of thought at the time, I just because Paul kind of sold him as, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. He's the greatest DJ you've ever met in your life. You're gonna love him. You guys are gonna get along so well. He loves the same music you do, but he's like next level. I really want you to hit it off with him because I really want him to play."
Put all the pressure on.
Yeah, totally. On meeting Shan for the first time, and then I met Shan, and he was anything but pretentious. He was not pretentious at all. Super nice, super accommodating. So we just got along really well. And I remember him telling me. So we kind of briefly talked about 45s, not a whole lot. That wasn't the gist of the conversation. And he just kind of told me, yeah, he plays 45s as well. And I remember him then even telling me he was planning on doing a tour around the world playing 45s, like beginning stages, talking about this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I couldn't imagine doing a whole set of 45s, but if you want to do it, go for it.
Because your collection's not that deep at this
My
stage.
collection wasn't that deep at all. I had other than like all the new bamboo stuff that was coming out at the time and the deep funk new stuff that was coming out at that time, my collection was basically bad 80s music.
Yeah. And there's a lot of 45s around of that because that's when you got singles like that.
That's all the stuff I had. So my collection wasn't that deep. I had a few soul 45s. I think I told a story recently on Facebook about how I dropped Little Richard Tutti Frutti one night on Lounge, and it just absolutely brought the house down. And that's when I first realized the power of playing an old track that people remember from their childhood, but in a different context with other music. And so I guess, so Shannon and I got along really well. We talked, and then, he goes back up to Sydney. He does play for Paul, but we didn't really do any gigs together or anything. And then we just kind of lost contact until soon after that, I started working with Functified, which was JC out of Sydney. And JC was bringing down acts like Georgianne Muldoon, Dudley Perkins. He did the Chic gig, doing some pretty George Clinton Parliament Funkadelic. Yeah. So I got hooked up with them out of Sydney. So whenever they would help tour acts, not that they were bringing the whole acts out, they would help tour them. They would help me be the actual support DJ on their gigs. So I did a few big gigs at that time.
And that's like a dream, man.
I know,
for someone
man.
playing Funk 45.
That's what I'm saying. So I would get booked for these gigs and there'd only be CDJs when I'd show up.
Really? But you got to have it right.
Oh, mate, I know. Well, see, Chris, I didn't know this at the time. I would just show up and take whatever they had available, you know. It wasn't until I finally played with the Fatback Band for Funkified.
That's another big name to drop.
That was at Corner Hotel where I specifically said, can we please have turntables? Because by this point, this is 5 years later, mate. Yeah. By this point, I was doing 45 sets. So I'm like,
but that's why they're booking you, though, because anyone can turn up and play funk. Well, obviously you had good taste, but with the CDJs, but they wanted that visual aspect. They want to see you flicking through the records.
Yep. So that wasn't happening in the early stages of Funktified. So anyways, I've kind of jumped a little bit too far ahead. So I met JC with Funktified, started doing events, and then he would book me to come up and play in Sydney. And so then when I'd go play in Sydney, Shan would be on the gigs. And so because we'd met already in Melbourne, we did a gig or two together in Sydney for Funktified, and we got to know each other a little bit more, but just always kind of, you know, he's doing the gigs, I'm doing it. Anyways, he invited me to come onto his radio show. So for those people that don't know, Shan's got a radio show that's been going for 20 plus years.
Only 20 years.
2SER. It's one of the longest running radio shows, I would like to say, in the world. But yeah, 20 plus years, Epic. Groove Therapy, epic show. And so he would have me on Groove Therapy, and I didn't know what the hell I was. He said, I remember he would come play records, and I remember shaking, bringing records in to play with him on a show because I was
But you'd play in front of big crowds before Parliament Funkadelic, but you didn't want to play just on the radio.
Well, because it was Shan, you know, like by this point I'd done my research on Shan, and I knew that he'd lived in Melbourne. I knew who his dad was. I knew the basically history he had. Like I'd kind of knew he was semi connected to the Resin Dogs, which was a big deal for me because he lived in Brisbane for a lot of years. I didn't realize that basically he was the catalyst for the Resin Dogs forming, you know. So these are things I found out after we started doing our radio show
because
together.
He's humble and he doesn't sort of drop those names.
That is what's so cool about Shan. He's the humblest guy you will ever meet. The dude supported every major Aussie hip hop icon ever to come to this country.
And he's very well respected.
And you would not even know it because he's this humble guy. So anyways, we hit it off, and then do you want me to go into how we started everything else, or do you
totally
want to,
yeah. Well, so he's got his show.
He's got his show. So he's on Groove Therapy. I was on Groove Therapy probably 3, maybe 4 times.
And you realized you had a good dynamic?
Anytime I was up there for gigs, I don't know if he realized we had a good dynamic. I think he probably just thought I talked a lot of shit. And Shan's a good operator, man. Shan's not gonna come out of the box and like be overtly, oh wow, that was the greatest thing ever, you know. I probably was horrible on his shows, to be honest, because he
kept having you back.
I was nervous. I think it was more just the fact that we were doing gigs for Funktified together, and he wanted to promo Funktified, and it was probably something to add. By that point, Shan was starting to pre-record a lot of his shows. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag. We do a bit of pre-recording of our shows. That's why they sound so slick, you know, that they do.
Going live would be tough like that broadcasting.
Yeah, we did a few live ones. We did do live ones, and he can, and he's the king of the live show too. So, I mean, he can do that. So, but he would still let me, I would come in and he would set up and do a live type show if I was going to be there, you know. And so, I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but in my own mind, this is how it works. So we kind of developed...
You can only speak from what you know.
Well, we kind of developed a bit of a friendship from doing that. So then it got to... I remember specifically, I came in and did one gig one night for Funktified, and then it might have been when I did the Silent Disco when they had... who did they have? It wasn't Coco, but it was somebody like that for one of the Silent Discos up there. And Shan didn't even play that night, but I remember after I was done with my set, Shan came and met my wife and I, and we all went and had late night food. And that was the first night I actually just sat down and talked to him, like for a long period of time. And we would have talked for 2 hours, my wife included. And then I think we just developed a bit of a friendship from that.
Yeah.
And just realized that we did have a lot in common. And I think that's when he first hyped me to the fact that of who he was and who, you know, his dad and all that stuff. So got to know that he was pretty big in terms of Australian hip hop, and I had no idea. I just thought he was friends with that dude playing the horrible new funk music, you know.
So you take your friendship to the next level by starting your show together.
Yeah. So what happened was COVID hit. 2019, I think it was. Yeah, 2019.
Yep.
I had just got out of the hospital with bacterial pneumonia. I'd been on the COVID ward for a week.
Yeah,
and
good, man.
Yeah, it was pretty shit house. And so I was just like everybody else. I'm locked down. Fortunately for me, I'm a teacher, so I had online teaching, so my job didn't stop. I didn't have to do job seeker or anything like that. But I'm just sitting around the house in between my classes, kind of twiddling my thumbs.
There's no gigs to play.
No gigs, and I'm a guy that does a lot of gigs because I love music. I'm addicted to it. And then I had met Jazz, who ran Bass FM until she sold it 2 years ago. I'd met Jazz at a gig at Section 8 that I'd played. I did one of those Brooklyn block parties like years ago with Dylan C. from New Zealand. He was on the bill as well. And that was the one that I had Ill Response rap with me. I'd done an all 45 set.
Jimmy, we love Jimmy.
Yeah, I love Jimmy.
He helped me out with the podcast a fair bit. He's a legend, Jimmy.
Absolute legend. Groove Penguin.
GPR. He's a real legend, and Jimmy's a champion dude.
Oh, he's a great guy. So Jimmy, I'd done this gig at there, and I just remember after my set, some woman from New Zealand, a Kiwi from New Zealand, she came up to me, introduced herself, told me she loved the set, thought it was really interesting that I'd brought records to play at a gig, and I'm like, wow, you should have seen the battles last year. That was something else, Anyways, told her this, like we just started talking, just really friendly, and then I actually reckon she had emailed me beforehand and told me she would be there, but I'd kind of forgotten about it.
Yep.
And then I kind of put two and two together. I'm like, oh, you're the person that emailed me. Didn't you want to did you need help getting gigs? And so I think I helped get Dylan C one gig somewhere. It wasn't anything spectacular, but I helped him do one thing. Anyways, she remembered me from that. So when COVID hit and all of their radio personalities, because remember, New Zealand was hardcore on the lockdowns. They were the first.
Yeah, so they couldn't, and they're not set up to record stuff from home yet.
They not at that point. They hadn't been. So I think they might have had some clean feeds going on, but they weren't set up for it. So they lost a lot of shows. So she put a call out on Facebook, and actually but didn't get much from that. So she sent me a personal message saying, hey, I don't suppose you saw my call out on Facebook, which I'd seen, but I thought, what the fuck do I know about radio? I can't do a radio show.
But one of your best mates,
I know. So she's all, hey, I'm really looking for somebody to help us with some content. Do you think you might be able to do some pre-record shows? Anything live, we'll take anything. Can you give me some mixes? I don't care. Give me anything.
And you've got heaps of mixes.
Yeah, so I knew I could give her that, but I'm like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm not doing anything. So but I have no idea what I'm doing. So what do? I'll call up my mate who I'd already started a record label with. Shannon and I had already started a 45s label by this point. So I was already in regular contact with Shan. We had already did the 45 sessions parties around Australia. So Shan and I were already close, talking on a regular basis. And so I just got on to Shan. I remember calling him up, just saying, hey man, and by the way, this is 4 days after I just come out of the hospital with bacterial pneumonia.
You don't sound great.
No, so I'm like, hey, how you going? So I'm like, Shan, I got asked to do a radio show. Do you want to do it with me? I'm like talking to him like that, and he's just like, fuck, you don't sound good. Yeah, sure, why not? We're, it's all fucked up here as well. So we'll do it. So I had as well had gotten hit up by Bondi FM. It was weird. It was just kind of like out of nowhere, all these radio stations came to me.
Is Bondi FM? I'm not familiar.
Bondi FM, they're really small, and I don't want to talk crap about anybody, but let's just say that wasn't the greatest experience. I did 2 shows for them, one of which ran on schedule. The second one the first one I did it with my mate, Mr. Lob. Big ups, Rob.
Rob Lobster.
And the second one I did with Shan, and it was vice versa. It was one of the two. I can't remember. Only one of them went at the right time. It was supposed to go on like a Sunday night during lockdown.
And you're recording it live?
I was doing a pre-record, having no idea. I literally had an SM58
microphone
at home, microphone, no laptop stand, no mic stand, nothing, because I don't. I'm not set up for anything.
But you must have a sound card. That's got to go.
I plugged the mic
into
I got an adapter into the headphone jack. I recorded
on Audacity.
I did. I used Audacity. How'd you know, man? Get out of my head, Chris. I did the first show on Audacity using it. It sounded like crap. This is why I think I did it with Rob. It didn't sound good. I listened to Shan's show.
You need a sound card. So how are you record? Yeah.
So I didn't know anything. So I remember I did that first show. And this is before I talked to Shan about Base FM. I did that first show. And then the second show, I asked Shan to actually come on the show and be my guest on the show to record it. But we didn't like do any banter. All I was doing was announcing, hey, this is so-and-so. Here's some music. And then did an hour set.
Yeah, so you're doing a radio show.
Yeah, but all mixed. It was a mixed show with like basically 3 voiceovers, an entrance, in between the mixes, and an outro to the show. It wasn't a real radio show. I just did it, and I sounded like crap. My mic sounded like crap. I've actually pulled those down off my Mixcloud because I'm so embarrassed by them because they sound so horrible. Yeah. So did those 2 shows. Anyways, after those shows aired, the second week they didn't play our show, and then that's when Jazz. Basically, she told me she definitely wanted to use me for something, but she couldn't lock down when she wanted to do it. She hits me up after I'd done the first Bondi show. Not that she listened. Hopefully she didn't listen. She probably didn't listen. That's why she called me. She hits me up and just says, hey, we're really keen on getting you guys to come in. We don't have anybody doing content. We need somebody to do a show. Can you guys do a show and send it in to us? And so since I'd had Shan on my Bondi show, we were already talking. I'm like, you want to do this show on Base FM? And Shan's just like, yeah, I'll do it. You know, he already had group therapy. He's busy enough as it is. Yeah. He's so busy with his actual job, but luckily he works from home. And
but he could do that in his sleep because he's churning out those episodes for 20 years.
Mate, so he is so good at that. So he asked me kind of what my setup was. I told him what I did, and he's just like, no, we're not doing that. That's not happening. Here's what you need to get. He told me how I needed to get a sound card, so I bought a sound card. But even I think our first couple we started the show. The show was originally called Juke Joints Radio. Mm-hmm. So we started as Juke Joints, named after our record label. And it was started out, it was going to be a 45s only show. So the first show on
people don't know that. They can't see that on the radio.
Yeah. No, that's a
you lose the kind of element of it.
I fully get this. I get this. There's no point in doing it. You know?
At this point.
But I mean, other than us, I mean, we cared about it. Like I had Mr. Lob on the show. You know, we care, and I've done 45s only shows for Low End Theory just because it's fun. You know, like I'll do it for that reason, but nobody can really see it. Anyways, the first show was Juke Joints Radio, and it was basically the show I had done on Bondi FM with Shan. But polished. But polished because Shan took control. Mm-hmm. He basically said, okay, you're going to need to download Ableton. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to buy Ableton. You're going to have to
download it legally.
Yeah, you're going to have to get it. Well, I remember I did the first couple times we did stuff on Ableton. I had the free version, which only had, you can have 6 tracks, I think. Yeah. And so I've got the proper version now.
Oh, that's good.
But so we did it on Ableton, and he's all, I'm going to cut it up and do a pro. He's all, we're going to cut down the sets so we can actually have breaks to talk. And so I didn't understand any of that. I remember
he knows how the formats work.
He's giving me instructions. I wrote everything down. Up until last year, I had everything taped up on my desk at home. So every time we did a show, I have all my instructions, literally 5 or 6 little cardboard pieces with paper taped to them with all the instructions on how to do a show, how to format everything, how to render it all when I'm done, everything down to the wire.
Without having a mentor like that, man, you would have just fumbled your way. You would have figured it out, but it would have taken a lot longer.
Way longer, and it never would have came out as well as it does because he showed me how to do that. And so we did the second show as a proper, it was still Juke Joints Radio, but we did it as us. We actually did mixes on the spot. Like I didn't even, and I'm on lockdown anyway, so I got all this time in the world, man. So we had so much time to spend on it. We brought in the Battle of the Blends, which was really annoying to a lot of people, but super fun for us. Yeah. And then I remember about 4 shows in, he's all, you know what we need? We got to start doing guests. And so he's all, I got my mate Tommy Rock from Death Wish Cast. So we got Tommy Rock, who was
and you've had now how many guests? So you've had what, like
close to 100?
Really? Yeah. So how many episodes have you done?
Oh no, not close to 100. Sorry, we've had well over 50.
50, yeah.
I would say, we've had a lot of guests because once it got out and during lockdown, everybody was free.
And because and international DJs, the international producers, they're going to be like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah, everybody wanted it. Like it was easy to find guests. I would hit up labels saying who we were. Like that's the other thing. Shan had this awesome little pro forma email he used to get guests for Groove Therapy. Yeah. And so then I would use that, just modify it for Low End Theory, send it out, and we're getting hit back by it. Nobody was saying no to us. So then they have other artists, and so we got in with a couple publicists that do publicity for a lot of artists, and so we would do interviews with people that most people don't know, but we knew that they had the big ticket artists down the track, that if we did these ones, we would get that one.
And you might do an episode, you think, oh, this guy hasn't got huge reach or whatever, but that doesn't mean they don't have an interesting story, or that, so it could be fucking really good content.
Yeah, and that's what we started getting into. It started becoming more about, well, because we did the research, it was like a hardcore research. Like I remember we interviewed, so after we did Tommy Rock, we didn't have another guest. The next guest we had, I did a 45 special with a bunch of 45s DJs, but I didn't interview them. And then we had, I remember, Smooth. That was the penny drop moment for me, because I didn't know how to do interviews. Like even when we did Tommy Rock, I remember Shan basically ran the interview. He asked the questions.
And this is all on Skype because he's in Sydney.
It started out on Zoom, and then we realized really quick that sounded like crap. So we used a program called Squadcast. And so we got this really nice program, Squadcast, that allows us to do it. Because he's in Sydney, I'm in Melbourne. And so we build ourselves as the original social distancing radio show because we were both in separate rooms. So I remember the penny drop for me when we got Smooth from Smooth and Terrell, absolute legend. If you're a breakbeat dude, everybody knows Smooth. Dope 45s, everything. He's just an absolute legend. And I remember I had all the time in the world, so I could have done my research, but I just didn't even think about it. I didn't think about this stuff, I come into the interview with the most stock standard, boring questions in the world. Talk to us about your life,
Yeah, which I've done a little bit.
I'm talking stock standard, boring shit, you know? And then Shan's asking these in-depth questions like you would not believe. Like he knew Smooth. I remember after the interview, I was embarrassed because I felt like Shan had this connection with the artist that we had in there, and I had this real superficial, I'm just kind of the dude cracking jokes on the other side. There was no connection between me and Smooth, and I get it.
But you learned.
And I learned Shan was prepared. I wasn't. So I remember after that one, I'm like, I'm never coming to an interview not prepared again. Yeah. And I'll admit, I've probably gone overboard way too many times. I have too much. Yeah. And to be honest,
gone like full Nardwuar where he comes out with stuff.
Way too much. Way too much, man. So now I'm at the point where I have to take it back a notch, and I'm still trying to find that, and I keep thinking in my head, I'm hoping I can get to that point that I'm like Shan, but I try to remember this dude's been doing radio for 20 plus years, probably closer to 30 years now.
But maybe and I'm any good
3 years,
Yeah, which is still a long time. But maybe like any good partnership, your novice approach and his professional approach kind of works together. Do you know what I mean? Because if you have two dudes who've both have like 20 years experience trying to do it their way, it might not fucking work. But because you've got, you're going to listen to him, maybe that's what makes it work.
I'm hoping that's what we do. I hope we do kind of pull that 1-2 punch with people where he's really good. He doesn't even need to prepare now. Like he's so good with interviews.
And he's probably so knowledgeable about the tunes and about the music that he doesn't, and then the artist can lead into somewhere and that artist worked with it, and then that's just practice as well. And having a music brain.
And I learned from him. I've learned so much from him, and I know this isn't all just going to be about Shan, and he would be the first person to be embarrassed by me talking about him this much. But
I'm hoping to get him on here eventually when he's in Melbourne.
He really has influenced me in the most positive ways, and so I have nothing but the utmost respect for him and what he does, and I actually feel so freaking fortunate to call that dude my friend, and if people know their history about Australian hip hop, man, they know who he is. And like, I don't know if people have listened to what's that hip hop show? The hip hop
Beats Biz and the
Dear Beats and the Biz.
Jake Biz,
anybody. I've listened to all of them. I love that show.
Yep.
But if you ever want to really listen to a true history lesson on Australian hip hop from a different perspective, I guess, because I reckon that's what Shan does. Yep. He gives it a totally different perspective on the history of Oz hip hop, which I really dig. So and I love doing the show, and it's super fun, and it's still creative, but unfortunately it's another added layer to what I've already, because once lockdown finished and Melbourne went back to normal, the gigs came back and went from us being able to record on Friday, Saturday nights to we can't do Friday, Saturday nights anymore because I've got a gig every Friday,
But you're
Saturday
still making
night.
It work though.
Yeah. So we just had to change up the times we do stuff. So like we recorded an interview last night that's going to be coming up next week, in 2 weeks time. So we're just recording more on weeknights, which is, puts that extra added little pressure on family.
And you're not sticking to a specific genre, like originally you're going down that sort of funk route, but now you've got hip hop producers, house producers, like you said, drum and bass producers, everybody.
Anybody, man. We haven't had a drum and bass producer yet. So I would love, like, honestly, because Mickey Finn was in town, I actually did hit up the publicist for Mickey Finn, but got nothing back. That would have been like my dream interview, to talk to Mickey Finn about
Who's
jungle.
your favorite one that you've got so far, actual guest that's done the show?
Oh, mate. If I have to go, my favorite, like the show where I actually felt we were doing something original, and like, not that I don't think we do an original show, but the one show where we've added something positive in life would it be when we had Ransom on, because that was in the middle of lockdown, and Phil was talking about the real life circumstances surrounding lockdown, what it meant for him. You know, he's a working DJ his whole life, and I have a lot of mates who are working DJs. His whole life was just thrown upside down, and him navigating through that, and the way in which he told it was so much conviction and honesty. Like, man, I felt it. I remember, I just gave myself goosebumps talking about it. I remember as he was talking, Shannon and I looking at each other like,
yeah,
this is real talk right now. All of a sudden I realized, I'm like, damn, it's like we're running a self-help show here or something like that. Like, and I would think that show would have connected to a lot of people at the time. If you didn't live in Melbourne and you didn't understand the lockdowns and what we were going through at that time, it wouldn't have meant a lot. But for me at that time, the Ransom show, and it still holds up for me today. That's one of my all-time favorite shows that we did, and I could still go back and listen to it, and it'll still give me goosebumps when he's talking about how he might have to go stock food on a shelf. Not that he's gonna have to do that, because of course he's come back and he's just dominating yet again, you know?
Yeah, man, like, we did go through a shit time, and now I think we forget how shit it was until you remember stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, man, no one was DJing, no one was playing anything, no one was going anywhere, no sports, couldn't go to the playground. So now it feels like a bad dream, but...
And DJs would remember, even when we came back, remember when there were the limits on the amount of people in the rooms? Yeah, you couldn't have dancing. I remember playing Wolf, like the first week we were back, having to, if people got up from their tables and actually started dancing, security would have to tell them to sit down, and they would ask me, can you keep it a little bit more mellow? Lucky Cock could not have, no. Those were our gigs. I'm like, no way, I would rather not do gigs again, you know. I'm like,
well, totally. When they thought everything was going to be like that for a while, you'd like, let's not even bother. Like, tell us when it can come back to normal.
That's what I would tell people. I'm like,
it was called vertical consumption. Remember that? So you weren't allowed to stand up and drink a beer.
Yes, I do remember
They'd be like, they can't have any vertical consumption. And I'm like, fuck, that better not become like a common thing. Vertical fucking consumption.
And I remember telling people, when it opens up, it is going to be like the end of World War II around Melbourne, and that's exactly how it was all of a sudden.
Totally. But remember when it was sort of the opposite, when we were told, you're going to go into another lockdown, but it's happening tonight at midnight.
Oh, yeah.
So then it was crazy until then. Like,
I remember that when that night happened. I was doing a 45 set at the Rachi in Fitzroy on Johnson Street.
Great pub.
Love that pub. You might even do your comedy
Wednesday night shit pub trivia with Connor.
Nice one. I like the little product placement right there. But I remember doing a gig that night. But then when I started, I was supposed to do 9 to 1. And so I already knew I wasn't going to be able to play till 1 because everything had to be shut by 12. And then I remember them saying, look, we have staff that need to get home before midnight. So we're closing at 10. I brought all my 45s down to play a 1-hour set, which nobody was allowed to do anything on because everybody's and it was the weirdest set. And I remember packing up my car, just being so destitute, driving back home going, I can't believe we're going back into lockdown again. And
cringy, man. Like, it's something that hopefully we never have to go through any of that shit anymore.
Yeah, let's pray.
Let's pray. I just want to talk about collecting records, because I know you've got an extensive record collection, 45s and otherwise. And you're always buying more 45s. You're like you said before, it's an addiction.
It's never ending, man. I was on Discogs in your parking lot before we came in because I'm currently addicted to buying Jungle 45s.
And the thing is with records or any kind of collections like that, there's no end game. You're never going to clock
Never going to have them all.
So then you might want doubles, or then you might want this release, or this is the international one, but I actually want the Japanese one, or what? It's like it never ends.
It's so hard, man. It's an addiction. I do liken it to a drug addiction. Not that I've ever been a drug addict or anything like that.
You don't need drugs.
I've never been an alcoholic. I've never been a hard, heavy drinker. It's just I've just always been a collector of some form. So I guess that's always been my drug. You know, I'm not gonna say I've never been a choir boy my whole life, but records have always been my drug.
Yeah.
I've always bought records. I never stopped buying records. When Serato came in and everybody was selling their records, I'm like, you're all idiots. I'll just buy your records now. So I started finding all the records. I'd go to Dixon's, it'd be packed, Alley Tunes packed. That's when I really started picking up a lot of 45s because people were just giving away for nothing, you know?
Yeah. And I guess people just, and the same thing's happening now with CDs.
Yep.
Like CDs are becoming retro, vintage, whatever. And obviously they don't have the same vibe as records, but they've still got really cool cover art, really cool like booklets, liner notes, all that sort of stuff, and it's tangible. And I think that'll come full circle as well.
Probably. Well, cassette tapes have come back.
Yeah. Cassette tapes are one thing. Do you reckon instead of 45 gigs, do you reckon you'll see people turn up with like the old CDJ, like, you know,
the old Denons? Remember the old Denons that you had to put the CD in from the side?
One.
Yeah, the rack mount one. Oh man.
And you had the button, the nudge button.
And sometimes the nudge button was on the side, like you had to actually bend down and touch the nudge button.
But then they came out with the ones with the dial, so you could nudge it like that. Dude. But do you reckon they'll start doing that now?
I hope not, man. But
that's vintage.
Mate, I know. But I'll you know what? I'm gonna leave my vintage to 45s. I'm gonna stay. I gotta put my foot down somewhere because honestly, if I take up another hobby, my wife will officially leave me, I reckon.
Because after doing all this, you've found time to start doing marathons or something?
Yeah, no, I've started running. So, I think I mentioned how, I had...
Is that because you're running from one gig to school in the morning?
No. I just, running's, for anybody, I mean, I don't know if this is a self-help lifestyle type show as well, but, when I had the bacterial pneumonia and I came out and I couldn't really walk, somebody that's quite energetic as I am, I couldn't handle the fact that I couldn't walk more than 50 meters, without losing all energy.
Yep.
So I started taking the dog out for walks. That turned into runs, and then I've never been a huge runner. I run, but never more than like 5 Ks.
Do you listen to music while you run?
Full stop.
Yeah.
So, and that was perfect when we started the radio show.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I got my headphones in. I would record the show, record sets, listen to interviews, stuff like that, and I would just put them in my headphones and I'd go for runs, and then they just started getting longer and longer, and then now got up into not necessarily a marathon. I haven't done a full marathon yet. That's coming in October, but just slowly picking it up until
there you go.
I go to and I don't know what the next phase from that is. But
I think it's something to do, and I've heard with other artists doing a similar thing when they'll record and they'll listen to their mixes when they run to get, all the production right. I guess when you're running, you're breathing, you're kind of in, and it tunes everything in rather than sitting in the studio or sitting in your fucking lounge room.
Yeah, because I find that boring, man. I've never, even when I used to record demos with our bands, they'd say, go listen to this in the car. And we'd go sit in my mate's car and turn on our demo in the car and have to listen to 10 of our songs back to back to back. And I found that boring. I'm like, I don't want to sit down and listen. I want to be doing something. So I couldn't stand. I still, to this day, I have to be doing something when I listen to music. I don't ever sit down and just listen to music. I'm either drawing while I'm listening, or I'm sorting while I'm listening, or I'm running while I'm listening, or I'm driving.
But that's one of the best things about music is it sort of works with everything.
Yeah.
So you can do it when you can consume it while you're doing anything. Like by yourself, with people, and that's what's cool.
Well, I find music to be such an introspective thing, man. I actually do, other than sharing it with people, because I guess I share it with people so often. There's a solid 20 hours a week I'm sharing music with people. So I guess that's a fairly good chunk of my working day nights is sharing music with people. But when I'm at home, I find I love listening to music either by myself or my sons, because my sons hype me. I mean, obviously, I've got 2 young teenage sons.
Yeah. Are they schooling you to some new stuff that you don't know?
They've schooled me to so much music, man.
Yeah?
Like I've learned... I mean, YBN would be some... I mean, I love YBN. Like I never would have got into YBN. I never would have got into Denzel Curry had it not been for my son. To be honest, I was over Kanye until my older boy got me into Kanye again. He's right into him. And then my younger boy is quite into his more harder styles, techno and things like that. And he's got a new love of drum and bass now, which... big ups. I'm so happy my son's into jungle and drum and bass. So he's hyping me all these new... Have you got into Head X yet?
No, man.
Oh, mate. He got me into Head X recently, and I've dropped some Head X tracks at Gersh one night, and it was sick.
Yeah. So,
it's just some, so I'm getting schooled by my sons now.
Which is cool. And do they have an appreciation for the older music? When I say older music, but, the... Yeah. Because even, the funk stuff, that's older than, it wasn't when we were kids. That was older again.
They do. I think they're going through a phase. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to speak too much for my boys, but I have a feeling anything I do, there's an element of non-coolness about it. You know, it doesn't matter if I'm rocking a packed menu or not.
Yeah.
It's still your dad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, your dad can't be that cool. You know, whatever your dad's doing can't be that cool. You know, so my younger boy comes to the gigs, so he loves coming to SB. He loves coming to Lucky Cock, places like that. My older boy wouldn't be caught dead in a venue that I'm playing unless it's Section 8.
Yeah, well, Section 8 is cool.
Yeah. So he loves the drum and bass and the jungle when I play it there. So he loves that. But I don't know. I mean, I think they maybe do. I don't know. Do they realize that they've got such an extensive record collection there to dive into if they want to? They neither of them have really ever taken it up. You know,
really, yeah.
The youngest is right into his. You know, he's got CDJs. He's got his Pioneer at home. They've never taken up the records. I tried. My older boy, I think I kind of missed the mark. I tried to force him to learn playing records. Like I had 2 copies of People Every Day, for example, and tried to show him how to beat mix with the 2 beats. And he tried that for, you know, maybe a half an hour. Yep. But then I get it. He got bored. It's a different generation for them, man. They don't stick with just one thing for a long period of time like I guess like we did, because they've got other ways to do it. If I would have given him 2 CDJs, he probably would have jumped right into it, you know. But I tried to force vinyl onto him, which wasn't really his thing.
It's man, look, my son's only 4, but he'll go and pull records out, and he just goes for the colourful one. He's like, "Dad, let's play this rainbow record," and like, so he's just going by the colours. But I think that's still a good way to start. You know, he's like finding the colourful ones, and he's trying to.
Man, if it gets him into it, man, that's completely.
But
fine.
also, you don't want to be one of those parents that pushes their kid into doing something that they don't want to do because you liked it.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think it'd be a shame for kids that, you know, have access to all this cool equipment and music and stuff like that if they didn't at least give it a go.
Yeah, and that's why I'm stoked at least one of my boys did. So my youngest son, Hendrix is right into it. He DJs house parties. He's got a gig coming up at a club soon. So yeah, he's getting out there, and you're like proud sports dad. I'm the proudest dad you can possibly imagine.
Are you giving him like a little folder, like if things go to shit, play these songs?
Yeah, no, he's at that stage right now. He wants to play what he wants to play. Yeah. So he's getting booked to play what he wants to play, which I get it. Like, I have no doubt in my mind he'll end up at Pawn. He'll end up at Revs one day, you know, playing those styles. He'll end up at Lucky Cock playing those types of more houseier styles, I guess I should say. But he's right into his techno, and he's really good at it. I'm noticing his transitions are really good. He's putting stuff in key, so he's paying it, because I've always been a stickler for key. You know, stick to the right key, Hendo. Don't mix 2 wrong keys over the top of each other.
Yeah,
at least
just avoid the clashes.
Yeah, so I've given him all that, and I guess he's been to enough gigs. He's seen me play enough gigs to lots of people to know how it's done. He's seen how to do transitions. So, you know, one song finishes, when one chorus finishes, you're right into the big part of the next song. So he's seen how you can build a crowd, because he's watched me do it more than enough times. He's been to that many of my gigs. So he's already got this inherent knowledge of it, which I think gives him a little bit of a leg up than what I've seen from other new DJs that start out. Yeah. Well, at least I hope he does. And I hope that's...
and if I think he's got a catalogue of music at home that he could run real deep. So, you know, if he adds what he wants to and then a bag of tricks that his old man can show him, then he should be on the right track.
I'm hoping that's the case. Already the fact that he's gotten a drum and bass, I'm pretty stoked with, because he was not into that when he started. Yeah. And he's right into it now because he saw me play it at Section 8.
Amazing.
And now he's right into his jungle and drum and bass. So, I mean, if I can just slowly keep putting that stuff into his mind, he'll rock it. He's going to do just fine. Yeah. So I'm really stoked with what he's doing.
Well, how do you balance, like, obviously the teaching and the DJing? Does it get to a point where you think this is, like, I've taken on this gig and I actually can't be bothered? Like, I know you're a ball of energy, but sometimes you think I've actually bitten off more than I can chew.
There's been times that I felt really busy, but never more than I could chew. I've always been really methodical about the gigs I do. Like, I'm the king of doing 3 to 4 gigs in a night. I know how to time them perfectly, give myself enough time to get to each one, because I'm not naming names. I don't want to be that DJ that shows up late and screws up the next DJ set. I've never once showed up to a gig late before unless there was a valid reason. So I've always planned stuff out. if I'm really busy with school, like I plan ahead. I look at my timetable at school. I know when all
So
my
it's
school holidays.
planning is the key.
Because I'm a nerd when I plan. I'm a head of faculty at my school, so I have to be really up to scratch. I'm a year 12 teacher, so there's a lot of planning. I'm very organized. I don't seem like it. A lot of people don't think I am. They just see this ball of energy that never shuts up and does like 85 billion things. But I'm actually pretty organized. My phone is a calendar of everything that I'm doing at all times.
Amazing.
And I stick to it. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'll be there. And so that's why venues love me, because I'm dependable.
I was talking to Matt Rad about this, and I say a lot of the mature dudes keep getting booked, and that's why they've been doing it for so long, because the younger guys are just a bit flaky with that sort of thing.
They can be.
And that's probably something that it goes with there.
And they may learn that. And I don't want to bash younger people, because I played with a lot of great younger guys too that are completely dependable. But that's just, again, it goes back to me starting playing. I wanted to make myself indispensable to every venue I played at. Show them that I'm keen. I always showed up on time. I would, whatever, if I said I was going to do it, I would do it. And venues like that. They know you're dependable. They know you're not going to F them around.
Yeah.
If they need help, show them that extra effort. Show them you actually care.
And that just puts you a level above the other.
Yeah,
people.
but you don't think. I keep thinking this. And Maloney, I don't know if you think this or not. I don't know how much you're out there. As I'm playing these venues to all these 18 to 25-year-old kids, keep thinking, there's going to come a time. I'm 48. I'm going to be 49 this year. At some point, they don't want to see their grandpa up there rocking a set. I'm assuming. I keep expecting it to happen, but I don't know when it's going to happen. So I'm comfortable.
There's lots of dudes out there that probably in a different genre. But look, if you look at the 161's having its 24th or 25th birthday, there's some dudes on there that are older than 48, right? That have been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, they are.
And there's some dudes playing still that are, in their 60s that don't have real jobs.
Yep.
Right? You've got another job. So if it does all fall to shit.
I guess I have something I can fall back on.
So I think you're okay. There's definitely some guys out there in their 60s that are still playing. So if that's anything to go by, you've got another 20 or so years left.
That's what I hope. But, in the same sense, should I really be dropping Taylor Swift as a 48-year-old man? That's the question I ask myself on a regular basis, because I absolutely love Taylor Swift.
But you've got to balance it out with other stuff that you like doing as well.
Yes, I do. But, let's get back to Tay-Tay. I do love some Taylor Swift, and she does go really well with...
Is she your guilty musical pleasure?
I wouldn't even... Yes, not a guilty pleasure. She is without a doubt musically.
Really?
I love Taylor Swift, man. Great songwriter. Respect what she does so much.
There you go.
And to be honest, anybody that gets that much venom from such a certain part of society, I love. There's got to be something.
And she can sort of put a positive spin on it.
Yeah, and it's good music, But obviously, I don't want to talk about Taylor Swift on the show, because I've just played myself out a little bit more. So, by the way, we don't necessarily drop Taylor Swift on our radio show. So,
do you want to plug your new radio show before we wrap things up? I should say your new episode.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know. We got a few episodes coming up, but yeah. So we do a radio show. The radio show is called The Low End Theory. Obviously, we lifted it from the all-time Tribe Called Quest classic album.
Yep, with some amazing cover art too.
Yes, yeah.
But your show art is awesome too.
Yeah. Well, big ups Mexi. I don't know if you know who Mexi is.
No.
So Mexi, he lives in Oregon now. He lives in Hood River, Oregon. So I was actually just in Portland visiting family, and I was bummed we couldn't actually hang out and dig. So Mexi's actually from Canberra. So he's part of the $2 Scratchies with No Name Nath. I met Mexi and Nath.
$2 Scratchies is a sick name.
Yeah. So they were awesome. They entered the DMCs way back in the day. So I met Mexi through my mate Mark Brand, who now lives in Canada, and he's pretty big doing lifestyle stuff himself. So I met the Scratchies from them, and so we just hit it off. And No Name Nath has lived here for solid 25 years now, I think. Ever since I basically lived in Melbourne, he's been here. So maybe only about 20 years. But
Part of the Perfect Strangers.
Yeah. So that's I just played with him last Friday night at Section 8. So he's one of my best mates. And so Mexi's and Nath go way back to Canberra days. And so Mexi is a sick graphic designer. So he got a job working for some skateboard company in California and moved to San Diego, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then the company ended up relocating to Portland, Oregon, or Hood River, which is kind of like a outer suburb of Portland, if you've ever been there. And he's just a sick artist. And so we needed once we changed the name to Low End Theory, our first couple shows were Juke Joints Radio, which, yeah, like I said, I have no problem never going back and listening to those again because my mic sounded so horrible. So once we went with Low End Theory, I remember Shan just saying, we need to be on point with our art.
Yep.
So I want a good logo. Who do you know? And I just thought, Mexi, I'm following him on Instagram. He's the sickest artist. So I hit up Mexi. I'm like, can you do some artwork for us? And he said, yeah, no worries. And he actually gave us a great deal. And he did the sickest logo, quickest turnaround time ever.
And it works with a lot of different colorways, which is really cool.
Which is all Shan. So Shan's a bit of a graphic designer himself. He doesn't like to admit this.
Yeah.
But Shan's actually a pretty sick graphic designer too. So yeah, Shan just kind of did the whole color schemes. I don't know. I mean, as much as I love to draw, I'm still a massive artist myself. I can't do stuff like that, at that level of quality. And so, yeah, so I mean, it's noticed. We knew we wanted to have something that if you saw that tile, you know it's our show.
Yep.
And I guess now that we're up, I mean, we're well over 200 shows now, but we've only podcasted. I think we're up to like 110 in terms of podcasting shows.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're up to, I think, 111. So
who's
so that's the new one. That's one that comes out tomorrow morning. So well, I don't know when this is going to air, but yeah,
it'll be. So it would have just dropped.
Yeah. So the show that just dropped, by the way. So we actually had the legendary producer Cerrone on the show.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people know. Love and C minor Cerrone, Super Nature.
Yeah.
Dude basically invented disco music.
Yep.
So he fell in our lap because he's doing a tour here. And again, one of those publicists that we've done heaps of interviews with people that aren't so well known, but we're awesome guests. Basically said, we've got Cerrone coming out. Would you guys do an interview to promote the tour? And we're like, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he was cool.
He was awesome. The only problem was he couldn't get Squadcast to work, so we had to do it through Zoom, and he did the entire interview through his laptop microphone.
So your SM50 would have been better.
Would have been way better. So again, I give it to Shan. He's got all the programs at home to make it sound better. He made it sound as good as he could, but it was like goosebump moments talking to him. So it was really cool. And then, who did we just interview last night? I'm trying to think who we interviewed last night. Oh, I can't.
Got too much on there.
We have way too many guys. So we had lots of interviews in the pipeline coming up. So it was somebody off Glitterbox. God, it's killing me now.
You'll think about it.
I'm not going to think about it. I'll remember it later, but it doesn't really matter.
And so let's plug your gigs as well. What other gigs? If people want to come and see Obliveus play, whether it's a 45 set or if it's with the turntables with the 12 inches or whether it's with the CDJs or whether it's with the fucking...
I don't play 12s anymore.
You don't play 12s at all?
Don't play 12s at all. Only records I take out are 45s.
Okay, because it's just too hard to manage.
Yeah, well,
and it's too many
I'm just so
tracks
used to them now, man. And to be honest, I'm quite comfortable playing 45s. It's probably the format I'm most comfortable playing on.
Yeah, amazing.
I had this conversation with Mr. Lobb, my partner that I've done gigs with for years, who's part of the 45 Kings, represent. And it's just one of those things, we're quite comfortable with it. You know, it's like the whole...
You know your music back to front because everything, you know where everything is, what's on the other side of this.
You got it. And because you got the Suzuki slip mats, they're they don't slip. You've got the Russell Cole Sydney Def Jam adapters for the middles.
You've got your own personalized one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I've got like 8 pairs of them because Russell just kept sending them to me because I was big for promoting them.
Yeah.
So I've got those. So I'm comfortable doing it. But I went a couple months without doing a set because I kind of lost some of the places. So I guess I'll tell you where I'm playing. So I do Transit Rooftop in the CBD a lot and Transport Hotel downstairs. So that's one of the venues that I book and play at a lot, which is cool. Play a wide variety of music there, kind of upbeat, but that's more of chilled out, people just sitting around. So not necessarily something I love doing as much. I love playing there, but it doesn't have the energy of a dance floor.
Yeah.
But I do Section 8 the third Wednesday of every month. We specifically asked for a Wednesday because we like to take it deep because that's our Juke Joints party.
Yep.
Where we just play 45s. I do Black Cat on Fridays once a month, all 45s. I do 55 a couple times a month on Fridays playing 45s. I do Workshop a couple Fridays a month playing 45s. I do the SB on Saturday nights.
Every Saturday now?
Not every Saturday. I've been booked for probably 3 Saturdays this month.
Are you in the main room or in the Gersh?
Main room. I play both. So I like Gershwin. So I like playing the electronic sounds. I don't mind it.
Do you play classic house or newer house or whatever?
I play a wide variety, man. Yeah. You know, and a lot old school electro clash stuff that, stuff that I kind of did like, And so to be honest, I wasn't wasn't playing electro house when it was big.
Yeah.
I wasn't playing electro clash when it was big. I was a hip hop DJ at that time, getting all hip hop gigs or breaks gigs or drum and bass gigs.
So it's cool to go back and revisit some of that.
And
stuff.
kids love it, and like but more commercially house stuff for that. Gershwin, you have to, that's if you want it packed.
Yeah.
Like, and if I'm playing Gershwin, I want it packed. I'm not going to play stuff that's going to send people to the other rooms. But then I play the main room's probably where I play most often because it's just wide variety music. I'm the main room and I just.
You'd be perfect for that.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever seen you there, but I can imagine that would be
just packed, going off, everything. I get to play my Tay-Tay, but I get to play my punk rock because I love playing punk rock. Like I go back to those records I was buying, back before I became a DJ when I was in high school.
That was cool about the SB when they did relaunch. Reopen, I should say. They were cool with you to play commercial music, but also like play some old rock and roll. They're like, you can do that. We give you creative control, and that's sick. Yeah.
And I think that's important for DJs to do that there.
Otherwise, it just becomes a commercial fucking.
We don't. I really make a point, because I still pay attention. Like, again, I still go into the venue. I still show up early for my sets there because I really enjoy that gig, and I actually really enjoy playing there. And I'll make sure that, like, I've walked in before and I've seen somebody playing the same thing that's getting played in the Gershwin set, and that doesn't click well with me. I'm like, it's supposed to be a point of difference. The rooms are meant to be different. Yeah. So,
unless the song's so ridiculously big that you can't escape it.
I get it, and I'm not having to go in anybody. No. So I personally want to make sure that never happens when I play there. So I will specifically, I don't play anything that's banging R&B at all for the first 2.5 hours when I do the 12 to 3s. I specifically play a lot of punk rock, play a lot of pop music. I play 80s, I'd try to go that route. I'll play hip hop.
Play a bit of yacht rock in there as well.
Oh, fully. I love my yacht rock. Yeah. So, and it's fun, man. And you played that room.
I did that for a while, but it is fun. You could pull out all that sort of
a blast,
obscure
man.
stuff.
And you got free reign as long as you're good and you can do it well, man. That's what they want, And it's a blast. It's a breath of fresh air, to be 100% honest.
I played there one night after the last set, right?
Yep.
After Bosco and Sophie Rose.
Yep.
Both of them got tipped $100 to play a song, right? Just a dude come up. $100. Yeah, I know. And then so the three of us had a text message like, "I just got $100," and then boss said, "I got $100," and I got there and I'm like, "Where's this dude with $100?"
I know. What did he want him to play?
I can't remember. I think Bosco said, I'll have to fact check this. He said no to something, and the guy's like, "I'll give you money. I've got heaps of money." You get those dudes there. Something like money's not an option.
Yep.
And he goes, "I'll give you $50," and he said 100 or something like that. And then she got tipped 100. But then I don't know, man. Whether either he took off or I was just playing music that he was already happy with. Maybe I should have.
I think that's a reflection on you, Maloney.
No, I didn't get any $100 tips. But have you? Well, actually, you do play so much. What's one of the weirdest things people come and say some weird shit, but you've seen or people have come and said to you while you're doing that, man?
Man, runs the entire gamut, man. You know, I mean, we've all had can you plug my phone in?
Yeah.
I've had people pull the decks down when they tried to lift up on stage. Not at SB, but at another venue before.
SB now has the fucking things like that high, so people can't.
I know, it makes it really hard for them to get. I can reach up to get there because I'm plugging in my Serato box. I like to go around the front and plug everything in so I don't mess up the DJ that's playing. You get the horribly shocking requests. But mate, I'm going to make every DJ listening to this hate me. I don't mind requests. I find so many new tracks that I never thought about playing. Obviously, I hate the phones that just get flashed when they're standing right next to you and it just says ABBA. It's like, come on, can you be a little bit...
It's exactly what Matt Rad said. Exactly the same thing.
Can you really be... Yeah, it's probably what I'm thinking right now. But honestly, I hate it. Because that's just lame. I'm like, that's just so obvious. Can you be a little bit less obvious? So I love it when somebody's actually listening to what you're doing and knows that you're trying to do... They know that you're playing mashup. I'm just a mashup DJ.
Everything.
That's all I am.
Genre jumping.
Yeah, that's all I do, man. I run the entire list. And so what I tell people when they ask for the wrong songs, I said, just stick around. I'll get there at some point. Yeah. I'll get into that. It's going to get in that wheelhouse at some point of the night.
Go and have a drink. Take it easy.
Yeah, chill for a second. Just chill.
I can't believe I haven't put this on my list of things to ask you, but where does the name Obliveus come from? I've never even asked you that. I've never asked you.
A true story on this. So I became a DJ. Like, I got my decks, quit my band, had my decks. started just playing my own house parties. And so I met this dude who's a deep house, like an old football mate of mine from high school that I played football with for years. We reconnected one night in a nightclub. And then he said, "Oh, you got to come. I'm throwing a party. I'm throwing a rave." And it was basically at an old, it was like one of those lockup, like the garages, you know, that you can store stuff, like storage places.
Oh, like a storage cage type thing.
Storage cage place, but it was a really big triple size one, you know. So he threw a rave in one of those. So I went to this rave, and that was the first time I'd ever been to something like that. And so I just fell in love with it that night. I didn't have my decks yet, you know. I'd had all my records. I'd quit my band already by this point, but I hadn't had decks yet. And so everybody there was obviously pilled up. You know, they were all definitely on drugs. I wasn't. And he's just talking to me. And so and I'm like, "Man, I want to do what you guys are doing." And he's just like, "Well, if you're going to do this, you need a DJ name." Because that was the time where everybody had a DJ name. I'm like, I don't know, you know, and so I thought about it. And I remember taking weeks to try to think of a DJ name. I was like, I got my decks. I had my decks and I had stuff, and I'm still trying to think of a DJ name. And somebody said to me once while I was playing, because I remember what I was doing. I was dropping hip hop into deep house poorly because I couldn't beat mix. I might have had All House You by the Jungle Brothers, and I'm trying to mix it into a deep house track. I'm trying to do all this, and somebody just said, and it was just horrible and it wasn't cool. I don't know what they're all, "Dude, you literally are the most oblivious dude I've ever met in my entire life, man. How could you think that sounds good?" You know, they just said something like that. I'm like, that's the name. That's the name. I'm going to be oblivious. And so I said it and it stuck. And then I went with the normal spelling for the first few gigs. And then when I moved to Australia, I decided to get cheeky. And I was like, I'm going to spell it Obi Live US. And tie into the United States.
I never made that connection.
So that's
I just thought that you were fucking around with it.
Stupidest idea ever. Because all my gigs, everybody misspelled it, and so it still gets misspelled.
I've put it wrong on a poster.
I know you have. I remember how many times you did Big Mouth and it was spelled wrong, but I'm cool with it. I'm the dumbass that spelled it the wrong way.
Well, then people still know who it is.
Yeah. So I mean that's how I came to the name in the very long-winded answer.
Oh man. Well, fuck, dude. I appreciate you coming in here.
Hey, this is so fun.
It is. It's great fun. So look, I say this to everyone that comes on. I'd love to do it again in the future. Hopefully, this thing gets legs and we can keep doing it. But unless there's something else that you want to talk about, I'm happy to wrap it up.
I'm totally happy to be done there too. And you need to come on our radio show. I think that's going to be the next step for us.
That'd be awesome. I'd be
I'm
stoked
going to get you
that.
to host with me, man. Get you on Squadcast doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a studio space hooked up down the peninsula there. I've got some mics and everything good to go. I've even got a sound card.
Ooh. Is that a little rip right there? You give me right now? A little rip back there? I got an SM58 that's only been dropped 3 or 4 times. Dude. I'm happy to give it to you. It's got the dint in it. Actually, it became my wedding mic that I would use when I did weddings for a while. So it smells like beer and piss as well. So
there you go.
Perfect.
That's perfect. All right. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
3,000.